I have been solo working on an Undertale-inspired emotionally rhythm-based game. It is based on my childhood imagination and play pretend that I always wanted to preserve in video game form. In my last devlog, I made the soundtracks for the first area of the game using beatbox. As my journey to create my first game continues, it is now time to develop my battle system. I initially wanted to use an Undertale-like system, but instead opted for a rhythm-based system similar to rhythm games. This idea might be changed in the future, but currently, I also need to have an attacking system in place. My main theme for the story will be preserving innocence, which I will go over on my story devlog soon, so I felt the Undertale killing system was too cruel and didn't fit. Instead, I went for a conversation-like system, where your primary attacks are comfort, reveal, and deflect, and each attack affects the stats of your opponents, specifically the stats of trust, hate, and bond. What stats do is that once they have reached a certain point, you'll be able to conclude the battle. I also wanted to add an item mechanic for healing. Using this as a basis, I first created a separate game file and made the basic setup and UI options. Hey, just a quick break here to tell you to like, subscribe, and comment on the video. For a small channel, any of those would help the reach of the channel a lot. Now, back to the video. Next, I needed a way to interact with the UI, which means I needed a cursor. So, I created a separate cursor file and established the functions for it to be able to load sprite sheets and move. This was all pretty simple to implement, and I continued on with adding in barriers for the cursor so it doesn't move away from its intended area. How this works is I will call the cursor game file from the battle game file and feed it the required information, like the position, the restrictions, and the amount it can move. Using this, I can use the position of the cursor to decide which option to run. This was actually my first time using a cursor, so it was really fun to experiment and learn how to use it as a cursor. Moving back to the battle, I need to actually add in the attacks the enemies will show at you. To start, I needed to add a pop-up for each of the options that you can initially click on, and it took me some time to really understand how the concept of the cursor works and uses its positions to run whatever option it was on. I might have struggled on this, but here's how it works. It is quite brilliant as I have a dictionary system that shows each option in its rectangle position, and if the cursor's rectangle is colliding with it, then it will run the command for that option. After some trial and error failure, I added a few dictionaries for each of the follow-up menus and connected the cursor to them. Next was deciding what each of the attacks would do. I decided on comfort, adding 5 to trust, 5 to resentment, and 5 to bond, and reveal adds 10 to trust, -20 to resentment, and 10 to bond. However, it takes away a third of your max HP. Finally, deflect takes away 10 from trust, 25 from resentment, and 10 from bond. Now, it's actually time to add in the attacks. Honestly, I have no idea how to do so. I surveyed some online code and tried my best with the notes. Eventually, I created a horizontal scroller that has notes scrolling by. How this works is each opponent has their own moveset that is from a dictionary, and it takes something random from their possible moves and runs it through the function to output the notes. They all go at the speed set for them, and the spawn delay between each is also decided, so there could be a long distance between notes or they could spawn really closely to each other. This was actually really buggy for me. I specifically remember this annoying error where my code kept crashing because of a type none error, and I may have struggled a whole day trying to debug this, and it ended up being a really simple variable that has turned into a negative number, which messed up the whole system. Continuing, I need to add in the actual clicking you do when the notes come by. This somehow became one of the worst debugging sessions I have ever had. For some reason, the colliding code wasn't working, and it doesn't register when my click is actually touching the note. I had to make the code really weird and unintuitive to make it work, but as they say, If it works, don't touch it. So as of right now, it is still like that. At the end, how this works is there is a rectangle in front of each of the buttons, and it checks whether the note is making contact with it and erases the note when it does. To expand on this, I need to add in a system similar to most rhythm games, where you have your perfects when you press it at the correct time, and a close or good when it's slightly early or late. I first designed text for the timings, which I'll go over in my next design devlog. Anyway, after importing the designs, I have to make the code. This actually was the easier things I've done. I really think I got used to the coding language and did it with minimal debugging and errors. It just checks whether the notes are in the perfect range, then the close range, and results in a miss if none of them trigger. So it goes somewhat like this. Next were just a few quality of life and basic imports, like connecting this with my main code and getting all the setup from the main code to get this done. Additionally, I made the clicks glow when you click it, which is a pretty cool UI indicator, I guess. Back to the main coding bits, I now wanted to add particles every time you click the notes. This was kind of a struggle for me, and I had to once again check online for help, and was finally able to implement a similar system to the notes. The difference was that I actually did some math to get the random angles of the particle traveling. This process works as follows. After a note is deleted, it adds 30 different particles in the code and calculates a random angle for each particle to travel in. Once it reaches a certain point outside the screen, it automatically deletes itself. I was really hyped about this and followed it up with the text displayed. In Undertale, every fight, a small text box will appear to update you on the enemy's status and feelings. I wanted to add something similar, but with a twist. The text displays the opponent's response to you, as in their response after you have conversed with them, to really make it feel like a real conversation you have with them. And last, but definitely not least, is the way to conclude the conversation. I went into two primary options. Number 1, to conclude with kindness, or number 2, to sever the connection between the characters. It is kind of like choosing your side in preserving your childhood or forgetting it. This was my way of separating the game into multiple endings. I really liked how the battle system turned out. There were a lot of struggles along the way, but I was able to learn how to implement a cursor and learn menu management. And for a little spoiler, it proved really useful in the coding process that I'll be sharing in the next coding devlog. That's all for this devlog. If you have any suggestions for this game or anything game related, feel free to comment them. If you want to see more updates of this project, I'll be posting them on my channel. For the next devlog, I'll be going over the story and direction for this game. And now it was time to do my battle system. I nearly initiate. Damn. Oh, you're still here. See you, I guess.